you haven't changed a single thing about your diet. Like, you are running the exact same miles you ran 5 years ago. You're lifting the same weights, eating the exact same meals.
Right.
But the number on the scale is going up, and it's settling right around your middle. Welcome to the midlife metabolic shift.
Oh, it is deeply frustrating for anyone going through it. I mean,
Yeah.
for so many, it just feels like a betrayal by their own biology.
Completely.
The rules of the game have completely changed, and that playbook that kept you healthy in your 30s is suddenly, well, entirely obsolete.
Yeah, and if you are listening to this right now and your body feels like it's playing by a brand new set of rules, I really want to validate that for you immediately. Because it actually is. Your biology has shifted.
It absolutely has.
Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission today is to look at this midlife metabolic shift and ask a very specific question. Can the massively popular trend of intermittent fasting actually fix this stubborn weight gain? Or does it, just make things worse?
It's a critical question because intermittent fasting is absolutely everywhere right now. I mean, it is touted as this ultimate metabolic cure-all.
Right, the magic bullet.
Exactly. But when you apply those generic fasting rules to a body navigating the menopause transition, the clinical results are far from uniform. In fact, they can actually be counterproductive.
So to get to the bottom of this, we are synthesizing a massive stack of sources for this deep dive. We've got clinical guidelines, reports from menopause societies, some really in-depth dietitian fact sheets, and the latest clinical studies on fasting and hormone health.
It's a lot of data.
It is a lot, but we are going to separate the marketing hype from the biological reality of aging, just ensuring you get the ultimate shortcut to being well-informed.
And before we can even ask if fasting is the fix, we really need to understand the mechanics of the problem.
Right.
We have to look at the perfect storm of midlife weight gain because it honestly sets the stage for everything else we're going to discuss today.
Yeah, the data in these sources is staggering, honestly. Like, women naturally gain an average of 1 to 1.5 pounds a year during the menopause transition.
Which might not sound like much when you just look at a single year.
Exactly. But it compounds. It adds up to an average of about 10 kilograms or 22 pounds overall during this phase of life.
What's fascinating here is that this weight gain is not a failure of willpower. It is a profound neurological and endocrine recalibration. We really have to look at what is happening under the hood.
Right, the underlying biology.
Exactly. So the first major factor is sarcopenia, which is age-related muscle loss. Starting around age 30, we naturally lose 3% to 8% of our muscle mass every single decade if we aren't actively intervening.
3 to 8%, that is huge. And muscle is the body's primary metabolic engine, right?
It is. It's very expensive tissue to maintain, meaning it burns calories just by existing on your frame.
So less muscle mass automatically means fewer calories burned at rest. You are just burning less fuel while sitting at your desk or watching television.
Yeah, and that drop in resting metabolic rate is incredibly quiet. You don't feel your metabolism slowing down day by day. You just suddenly notice the consequences when your genes don't zip.
Which is the worst feeling.
It is. But then you add the major hormonal shift on top of that. As ovarian estrogen declines during perimenopause and menopause, the way your body stores fat completely changes.
Because estrogen acts as like a protective buffer, right? Traditionally helping to distribute fat around the hips and thighs.
Right. But without that estrogen buffer, fat storage shifts directly to the abdomen.
The sources refer to this as visceral fat, the deep internal belly fat that wraps around the organs.
Yes. And the numbers jump significantly. Visceral fat goes from making up about 5 to 8% of total body weight all the way up to 10 to 15%.
Wow. Which, I mean, is much more than a cosmetic annoyance.
Oh, absolutely. Visceral fat is highly metabolically active. It releases inflammatory cytokines into the bloodstream, which increases the risk for cardiovascular disease, severe insulin resistance, and type 2 diabetes.
So on top of the cellular changes, we can't ignore the behavioral shifts caused by this transition. I mean, the hot flashes, the night sweats.
They absolutely ruin your sleep quality.
Totally ruin it. And when your sleep is ruined, your hunger hormones, specifically ghrelin and leptin, they just go completely haywire.
Right. Your cravings for fast energy just spike.
Furthermore, your spontaneous activity, what scientists call NEAT, or non-exercise activity thermogenesis, it just plummets. You stop fidgeting, pacing, taking the stairs, just because you are utterly exhausted.
It creates this intense compounding cycle. You're moving less throughout the day. You're craving more energy-dense, sugary foods because you are chronically tired, and you're burning fewer calories at rest because of that muscle loss.
And you are hormonally primed to store any excess energy directly around your midsection.
Precisely.
It's like your car's engine is suddenly shrinking, meaning you don't burn as much gas to get from point A to point B.
Yeah.
At the exact same time, the fuel tank is moving from the trunk right onto your dashboard where it's constantly in your way.
I love that. That is a brilliant way to visualize it.
It is a fundamental shift in how the vehicle operates.
It is. The underlying mechanics have changed. And understanding that new machinery is exactly why dropping a generic intermittent fasting routine into this specific hormonal storm can trigger a massive backfire.
Well, let's get into the mechanics of that backfire because fasting is so hyped right now.
It is everywhere.
We see people doing the 16-8 method fasting for 16 hours, eating for 8, or the 5-2 diet, where you eat normally for 5 days and severely restrict calories for 2.
Right.
And the way it is supposed to work sounds incredibly logical. The goal is to deplete your glycogen stores so your body is forced to start burning fat for fuel.
And we should probably define that for clarity. Glycogen is essentially your body's short-term energy battery. It is the readily available carbohydrates stored in your liver and your muscles.
Your body loves burning this glucose because it is easy access.
Exactly. So when you stop eating for an extended period, you force the body to burn through that stored glycogen battery.
And once the battery is empty, which takes around, 12 to 14 hours, depending on your activity level?
Yeah, roughly 12 to 14 hours. And once that happens, insulin drops.
That is the textbook mechanism.
Right. Once insulin drops, you flip the metabolic switch. Your body has to find a new fuel source, so it starts pulling from your fat stores.
Okay.
In a highly resilient, low-stress system, that metabolic switching, from burning glucose to burning fatty acids, can improve insulin sensitivity and promote deep cellular repair. It introduces a mild adaptive stress to the body.
Hormetic stress, right?
Yes, known as hormetic stress.
Let's pause on hormetic stress for a second. Think of it like building a callus on your hand. A little bit of friction makes the skin thicker and more resilient.
Right.
But taking a belt sander to your hand doesn't make it stronger. It just causes a severe injury. Fasting is supposed to be that gentle friction.
That is an excellent analogy. The problem during the menopause transition is that the body is already experiencing the metabolic equivalent of a belt sander.
It's just too much.
It's under an immense amount of systemic stress. As estrogen drops, you lose a natural buffer against cortisol, which is your body's primary stress hormone. The shock absorbers are worn out.
Wait, I've always heard fasting is supposed to lower insulin and improve metabolism across the board. Are you saying for women in midlife, it literally does the exact opposite?
In many cases, yes, because of the cortisol trap. If you implement a long, rigid fast, say, pushing through 16 or 18 hours in a system that is already flooded with stress and lacks that estrogen buffer, the brain stops seeing the fast as a healthy challenge.
It doesn't see a callus building.
No, it sees a massive threat. The brain signals famine.
So if the brain thinks there's a famine, I'm assuming it doesn't want to burn fat, right?
Yeah.
It wants to hoard it. Does metabolism just hit the brakes?
It slams on the brakes. To keep your blood sugar stable during what it perceives as a famine, this highly stressed body starts pumping out even more cortisol and adrenaline. And this chronic elevation of stress hormones actually worsens insulin resistance over time. Furthermore, the body can suppress thyroid function, slowing down your overall metabolic rate even further to conserve whatever energy you have left.
And earlier you mentioned that visceral fat, that deep belly fat, is linked to all these health issues.
Yeah.
How does cortisol specifically impact that area? Like, why doesn't it just tell the body to store fat in your arms or legs?
That comes down to receptor density. Visceral fat cells actually have a significantly higher concentration of glucocorticoid receptors, which are the receptors specifically designed to bind with cortisol compared to the fat cells in your subcutaneous tissue, like your hips or thighs.
So when cortisol floods your system, it's literally sending a targeted molecular signal straight to your belly.
Exactly. It is instructing your body to fiercely hoard energy right in your midsection as an emergency reserve.
That is wild. So you're skipping meals, feeling hungry, trying to do the supposedly right thing for your health, and biologically, your body is responding by shutting down your metabolism and clinging to belly fat to save your life.
Yes. The nervous system in menopause desperately needs safety, not scarcity.
Right.
If your fasting routine is disrupting your sleep, causing you to feel wired and anxious, or making you obsess over food, it is actively fighting your physiology. You are pouring gasoline on a cortisol fire.
And if hitting the brakes on your metabolism wasn't bad enough, this brings us to the real danger zones.
Yeah.
Beyond just the hormonal backfire, aggressive fasting introduces some really severe physical and psychological risks that become particularly dangerous in midlife.
We absolutely have to address muscle loss again here. As we established, you are already losing precious muscle naturally.
Yeah, that's sarcopenia.
Right. If you attempt extended fasts, anything over 16 to 20 hours without adequate protein intake, your body still requires amino acids to function and repair tissues. Where does it get them?
I'm guessing it breaks down your existing muscle tissue to harvest those amino acids.
Exactly.
So it's sarcopenia on overdrive. You are literally cannibalizing your own metabolic engine just to survive the fast.
And regaining that muscle in your 50s is significantly harder and takes much more effort than it did in your 20s. The long-term cost to your metabolic health, your bone density, and your physical strength is severe.
The clinical guidelines also dedicate a significant amount of focus to the mental toll. The sources we reviewed from eating disorder specialists were very clear on this.
Yes, they were.
Intermittent fasting is fundamentally a form of restriction. And ignoring extreme hunger cues because an app on your phone tells you it's not time to eat yet, that is incredibly risky during a vulnerable life stage.
It creates a dangerous disconnect between your brain and your body's natural signals. During menopause, sleep deprivation and fluctuating hormones already scramble your hunger signals.
Absolutely.
You might be experiencing intense biological hunger because your body desperately needs nutrients to manage this transition. But if you force yourself to ignore that biological signal for hours on end, you blur the line between true hunger and emotional eating.
Which leads right into the restrict then binge cycle. When you finally do open your eating window after suppressing extreme hunger all day, the biological drive to overconsume is overpowering.
It is.
It can look and feel exactly like a binge, leaving you with intense feelings of failure.
It's a crucial psychological distinction. Intermittent fasting itself is not an eating disorder, but it can very easily mask, trigger, or normalize disordered eating behaviors.
So what does this all mean for the listener? How do you know when you've crossed the line from a healthy habit to a disordered one?
You need to watch for the psychological red flags. Are you feeling intense guilt or shame for eating a piece of fruit outside your designated window? Are you extending your fast the next day as a form of punishment for what you ate yesterday?
Which happens so often.
It does. Are you obsessing over the clock, completely distracted by hunger but refusing to eat? If fasting is costing you your peace of mind or your social life, it has become detrimental.
And the medical guidelines are very specific about who should avoid fasting entirely.
Yes, very clear.
Anyone with a history of an eating disorder, anyone with type 1 diabetes, people on certain medications that require food, or anyone who experiences dizziness, severe mood swings, or debilitating fatigue during a fast.
If your body is screaming at you, you have to listen to the warning bells. Fasting should make you feel clearer and more energized, not fragile and exhausted.
But here's the vital pivot. Intermittent fasting isn't inherently evil. The science does show benefits.
Oh, definitely.
It just needs, essentially, an extreme makeover for the midlife body. We shift the focus from strict restriction to biological alignment. How do we tune this practice to work with this new biology instead of against it?
The sources suggest ditching the rigid 16-8 schedule entirely. A much safer, smarter starting point is a gentle 12-12 or 14-10 window.
Right.
They recommend starting with a simple 12-hour overnight fast, say finishing dinner at 7 p.m. and having breakfast at 7 a.m.
Wait, 12 hours. Finishing dinner at 7 p.m. and eating breakfast at 7 a.m. isn't intermittent fasting. That's just, sleeping. How can there be clinical evidence that just eating a normal breakfast does anything for metabolic health?
It seems almost too simple, doesn't it? But that 12-hour window is deeply rooted in how our gastrointestinal system functions. It takes several hours just to fully empty the stomach and move food through the small intestine.
Okay, that makes sense.
That 12-hour overnight break gives your pancreas a rest from producing insulin, allows blood sugar to stabilize at a low baseline, and stimulates something called the migrating motor complex.
The migrating motor complex.
Yes, that is basically your gut's internal street sweeper, clearing out undigested food and bacteria. You only attempt a 14 or 16-hour fast on days when you are exceptionally well rested, your stress is low, and you feel genuinely good.
So you adapt the fast to your daily capacity, not the other way around. Here's where it gets really interesting. The sources highlight a concept called early time restricted eating, or ETRF. It turns out when you eat matters just as much, if not more, than how long you fast.
This is a major paradigm shift in the research. Studies consistently show that aligning your eating window with daylight hours is highly effective for metabolic health.
So we are talking about eating your meals between, say, 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. Eating a massive meal at 9 p.m. is like having an Amazon delivery truck show up at a warehouse at 3 a.m.
Right.
The workers are asleep, the lights are off, and the boxes, in this case blood sugar, just get left out in the aisles, causing total chaos.
That visual is incredibly accurate. Our metabolic hormones, including insulin, follow a circadian rhythm. We are much more insulin sensitive in the morning and early afternoon.
So by stopping eating at 6 p.m., you're making those metabolic deliveries only when the workers are actually on the clock.
Exactly. By finishing dinner 2 to 3 hours before bed, you allow your insulin levels to drop and your core body temperature to cool naturally, which is a physiological requirement for deep sleep. Oh, that is fascinating.
Clinical trials on this early eating window show it lowers blood pressure, dramatically improves insulin sensitivity, and prevents those midnight blood sugar crashes that jolt you awake at 3 a.m.
It's like tuning an instrument. You aren't forcing your body into a rigid 16-hour box anymore. You're playing the notes that match your natural circadian rhythm. You are eating when your body is primed to digest and fasting when your body is primed to rest.
But while you are tuning that instrument, the research lays out strict biological non-negotiables you must include to protect yourself.
Right, the fine print.
Yes. If you are shortening your eating window, you cannot shortchange your nutrition. You absolutely must consume adequate protein. Specifically, the guidelines recommend 1.2 to 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight.
To protect that metabolic engine we talked about earlier, without it, the sarcopenia takes over.
Exactly. And you must combine that daily protein intake with strength training or resistance exercise 2 to 3 times a week.
That's non-negotiable. Completely. Fasting without prioritizing protein and weightlifting in midlife is a recipe for physical frailty. You have to give your muscles a mechanical reason to stick around through the lifting and the nutritional building blocks to rebuild through the protein.
We also need to touch on the context of hormone replacement therapy, or HRT, because it comes up constantly in the medical literature surrounding menopause and weight gain.
It does, and it's important to be clinically precise here. HRT is not a weight loss drug. Taking estrogen will not magically melt away pounds.
Right.
However, it can help redistribute that visceral belly fat back to a more premenopausal subcutaneous pattern.
And arguably more importantly, it can cure the night sweats and the hot flashes that are destroying the sleep cycle in the first place.
Which changes the entire behavioral landscape.
Oh, completely.
If you are finally sleeping through the night because your hot flashes are gone, your baseline cortisol lowers, your ghrelin and leptin hunger hormones stabilize.
You aren't waking up craving sugar.
Right. And you actually have the physical energy to go lift those weights and prepare a high-protein meal. It makes the necessary lifestyle changes infinitely more sustainable.
It's all connected.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, all these massive evidence reviews ultimately show that intermittent fasting is roughly as effective as standard continuous calorie counting for weight loss.
Right.
There is no dark magic to it. The magic is simply finding the structure that you can actually sustain joyfully.
Whether you eat 3 balanced meals a day,
Mm-hmm.
or eat within an 8-hour window or a 10-hour window. I mean, if the routine causes you chronic stress, you will eventually abandon it. Consistency is what creates biological change, not extreme restriction.
Beautifully said.
Okay, let's bring this all together. Midlife weight gain is real. It is deeply biologically driven by a natural loss of muscle and a dramatic drop in estrogen, and it is entirely normal.
Very normal.
Intermittent fasting can be a useful tool to help manage those metabolic shifts, but only if it is gentle. It has to respect your cortisol levels. It absolutely must prioritize muscle preservation through adequate protein and lifting, and it needs to align with your natural sleep and waking cycles.
You cannot starve your way through a hormonal transition. You have to nourish the body and support the nervous system.
You know, all this talk about aligning our eating with our sleep cycles brings up a wild thought. We've talked about how our human metabolic system has this circadian clock, but what about the trillions of bacteria living in our gut?
The gut microbiome, that is a fascinating frontier in gastroenterology.
Right. Do those trillions of bacteria have their own sleep-wake cycles? If we are doing this gentle 12-hour overnight fast, are we actually giving our gut bacteria the night off to restructure, clean house, and heal the digestive tract during the menopause transition?
There is emerging, highly compelling evidence suggesting exactly that. The microbes in our gut fluctuate significantly in composition and activity based on our feeding and fasting rhythms.
Oh, wow.
A consistent, gentle overnight fast might be essential for maintaining a healthy microbiome, which in turn profoundly impacts systemic inflammation, how our body clears excess hormones, and even our daily mood.
That's incredible.
It is a powerful reminder that we are managing a highly complex, interconnected ecosystem, not just operating a simple calorie calculator.
Something fascinating to ponder as you plan your breakfast tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. You are now armed with the actual biology behind the buzzwords, so you can make this transition smoother and work with your body instead of fighting it.
Absolutely.
Remember, if your engine is shrinking and your fuel tank has moved to the dashboard, you don't stop driving. You just have to learn how to drive the new car. Take care, and we'll catch you next time.